Hello everyone and welcome to Arcade Saturdays. I'm your host nicodemoscain. Every Saturday I try to go out and find some classic arcade games that we can play using some type of emulation, tell some tales, live some nostalgia, and have a good time. Today we're having a very special episode because today is the 50th episode of Arcade Saturdays. I personally never really thought that we would get this far, but we're here. And I said I was going to do something special. So right now I have my top 10 arcade games of all time. Now, of course, this is a personal list. This is a personal opinion list of mine. Now, of course, people's opinions may change. This is not based upon sales figures. This is not based upon the amount of money that it's ever made. This is quite simply all the games that I played throughout my entire life that meant something special to me. If you guys have top 10 lists that are different than mine, please feel free to leave it in the comments. Let me know. While you're down there, hit the subscribe button and give it a thumbs up just for the sake of it. If you guys want to see me play some classic arcade games, I do this every Saturday, so please feel free to come back, check it out, and we'll see what we can do. Now, on to the list. Number 10. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. TMNT was released in 1989 by Konami. This was one of those classic side-scrolling beat-em-ups you used to be able to find. Sometimes you would have the 2-player mode, and sometimes if you were lucky, you were able to find the 4-player cap, which is the most amazing thing. If you could ever get 4 guys on this at once, you could all team up with any of the 4 turtles and go and bash some Foot Clan baddies. This was one of the absolute classics that I don't want to say it started the whole side-scrolling beat-em-up revolution, but this led to The Simpsons, and there was also the X-Men, and there were a couple other ones as well that were based either upon a cartoon or a movie of the time. And this one especially, just because of how fun it was, how colorful it was, and gosh darn it, that soundtrack was just amazing. This one definitely ate a lot of quarters of mine. Number 9. Daytona USA. So Daytona USA was one of the best racing games that you could ever ask for. It was colorful, it was bright, that soundtrack was just amazing. It came in a sit-down car that you could actually drive, plus you could hook 4 of these things up together at once simultaneously to be able to race 3 of your friends on the same track. It's considered one of the highest grossing arcade games of all time, and let me tell you, that's no joke, because when these came out, they cost more than a quarter to play. I'm not really sure exactly how much it was, but I know it was at least 50 cents. And 50 cents back in the 90s, that was pretty big stuff. One of the few arcade games that maintained a consistent 60 frames per second, even with multiple opponents on the screen. It was absolutely an incredible game to find. And if you ever saw it, or if you ever heard it from outside of a mall, you came running for it, because Daytona USA was one of the best racing games that you could ever play in the arcades back in 1994. Number 8. XMen. So the XMen was something special. It was produced by Konami back in 1992 as a side-scrolling beat-em-up, similar to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and The Simpsons. This one, however, went totally insane and put 6 players at once if you could find one of the big 6-player consoles. Now, in order to accommodate those 6 players, they had to have 2 screens side by side just to be able to fit all the characters on it. It was bright, it was flashy, there were things going off left and right, and it was the X-Men, which is one of my favorite comic book titles of all time, so I was in love. One of the things that I found out that I did not know while doing this was it was based off of the 1989 X-Men pilot episode, X-Men Pride of the X-Men, which would explain why in 1992 some of the characters looked a little bit out of date than they were in the 1991-92 reboot of the X-Men comic book franchise. But that didn't matter to us, because any chance that we got to be able to take Wolverine and Colossus out and just completely destroy Magneto and the White Queen and the Blob and all the others, we took it. This one stands out as one of the few arcade games that I was actually able to beat. At the time I was able to beat it, I had 5 other guys with me, and we just kept plugging quarters into this thing just to be able to get all the way to the end. And when we finally got it and you see that final screen, it just made you feel like $1,000,000. Number 7. Terminator 2: Judgment Day. T2 was released back in 1991 as a stand-up, shoot-'em-up arcade game where you apparently took the role of a T-800 Terminator that had been reprogrammed by the human resistance, and you were set out to destroy all the other Terminators in the world. Now, of course, this console had the 2 Uzi-style machine guns that had a vibration feature in it. Now, if you were to play this game for long enough, that vibration feature inside of the guns would heat up. And eventually, what would happen was you were able to reset the console, which is what me and a friend of mine did whenever we pumped $24 into this console to be able to fight all the way to the end to be able to beat this game. True story. But this game takes you from the future where Terminator robots are running at you full steam. It takes you all the way into the present where you have to save John Connor and his mother from the T-1000. An excellent game for an excellent time based off of an excellent movie. Number 6. Super Offroad. This one's more commonly known as Ivan Iron Man Stewart's Super Offroad, but somewhere along the line it lost the license. This one came out in 1989 and featured 3 racing wheel setup in which you can take control of 3 different colored race trucks and drive them around a track super sprint style. Now, the reason that I love this one so much was just the insane playability of this series. Sprint and Super Sprint and Championship Sprint were all great games that featured Indy cars that you could drive around the tracks. But Super Offroad took it to the next level with puddles and jumps and nitro and just an insane amount of speed. Absolutely loved finding this one, and I will never forget taking that steering wheel in my hands and cranking it just to be able to watch the trucks just spin round and round in circles, and always finding a way to push your friends out of the way to be able to win the race. Number 5. Elevator Action. Now here's where it gets a little personal for me. Elevator Action was one of those games that I always tended to gravitate to. Like Dig Dug and like Burger Time. This was one of those few that if I could ever find it, I had to play it. The only reason that Dig Dug and Burger Time are not on this list, though, is because if I had my choice, I would rather be playing Elevator Action. So this one was released in 1983 by Taito, and it features a spy that is infiltrating a 30-story building filled with elevators and bad guys in black. From trying to get through the red doors on time, to jumping over the bad guys' bullets, to even crushing the bad guys underneath the elevators. This one was just an amazing game, and I especially find it interesting that this is one of those rare lost gems that not many people talk about anymore. But it's one of those that I've always held on to, and I've always loved, especially whenever I was a kid, whenever this came out. Number 4. Tron. Now, for anyone that was alive back in 1982, you know your first experience coming upon a Tron cabinet. The blue lights, the noises, just the futuristic look of the whole thing just made you want to play this. Especially if you were in a darkened arcade, seeing this in the background, glowing blue, with that noise, that Tron music coming out of it, you just couldn't help but gravitate towards this. Now, of course, Tron was based upon the Disney film, and it featured 4 separate mini-games. One of the reasons why I loved it so much was that you could go 4 different ways. You could go play as the battle tanks, which of course I was never really the biggest fan of. You could go play the I.O. tower, in which grid bugs would come down and try to destroy you while you tried to go to get into the main circle. You could go play the MCP cone, in which you had to destroy a multicolored wall that was constantly spinning to be able to get to the top of the cone. And of course, there was the ever-popular light cycles, which was the ultimate thrill ride for any kid that ever played this game. Now, I always had a problem with the light cycles because I could never really get the hang of it. I always wound up crashing into myself in what was basically the craziest game of Snake that you could ever play, but that never stopped me from coming back as much as I possibly could. Number 3. Spy Hunter. Spy Hunter, yet again, is another one of those classic games that kind of takes it back for me, hits me right in the heart. It was one of my favorite games, absolutely. Anytime I would ever find a Spy Hunter cabinet, I would have to get on it. The steering wheel, the top-down shoot-'em-up racing action, the weapons trucks that would pop up, and that theme. It's the theme that would make you feel like you're some kind of international spy and you're trying to make it up to be able to get to the boat, to be able to go wherever it is, because I never actually got to beat the game. This one came out in 1983 by Bally Midway, and it was an absolute classic when it came out. Now, it was followed up by Spy Hunter 2, which honestly was not nearly as good as the original Spy Hunter, but it just was not the best. But this one, without a doubt, if you could ever find Spy Hunter, if you could ever find a sit-down version of Spy Hunter and just be engulfed by this game, it was such an amazing experience, especially as a kid. Number 2. PacMan. What can I say about PacMan that hasn't already been said? Released in 1980 by Namco, just about everybody that knows video games knows the name PacMan. What started out as a video game idea based upon a pizza with a slice pulled out of it has turned into an international phenomenon, a worldwide phenomenon that has lasted still to this day. Simplistic gameplay, crazy characters, and just sheer video game enjoyment has kept this game going and going and going for years and years and years, especially into this era where they are now starting to change up the formula of Pac-Man to bring it to a wider audience, especially with Pac-Man Championship Edition or Pac-Man 256. I know that the Pac-Man legacy will wind up going on and on far, far further than any other video game series ever possibly could think of doing. And as anyone knows, especially if you watch the first couple of the Arcade Saturdays, Pac-Man was more than likely my first video game I ever played. And this is the one that I usually always go back to, especially if I find it sitting in the corner somewhere of some pizza place that we happen to be at. Thank you, Toru Iwatani, for giving us the phenomenon that is Pac-Man. Number 1. Galaga. Now, only just edging out Pac-Man as my favorite game of all time, Galaga, released in 1981 by Namco, will always hold my heart as the best video game of all time. And it's only because between Pac-Man and Galaga, I would rather be playing Galaga. Whether it's shooting the bugs out of the sky during the challenging stages, whether it's dodging enemy fire on the harder stages, or whether it's getting that dual spaceship and just blowing them all away, Galaga has always been and always will be the game that if it's in any arcade, I have to stop everything I'm doing and plug a quarter into it. Anymore, it's 2 quarters to plug it into it, but for me, it's worth the money. Never have I had a video game that has held my attention for longer than Galaga has. And to know that this game will be able to long surpass anything that has ever come before, just like PacMan, I know that I will always be able to find a way to play it in some way, shape, or form. There you go. There you have it. That's my top 10 arcade games of all time. It wasn't easy putting this list together, but hey, I had to do it sometime, right? So with that, please feel free to leave your stories down below. Leave your top 10 list of your top 10 arcade games of all time down below. That way we can all share our stories of going out to the arcades and playing some classic arcade games. I know that I have my stories, I have my tales, and I tell them every Saturday. If you ever want to hear them, come back next week and we will probably be playing something else. But I always like to hear other people's stories as well. So please, by all means, drop me a comment, let me know. Let me know if there's any other arcade games that you would love to see me play or you think that I would like to play, and I will do my darndest to be able to try to get that out for you. But other than that, I thank you guys very much for coming around, checking this out. I have been nicodemoscain. This has been my top 10 arcade games of all time. Like, comment, subscribe, or don't. And until next week, I wish you all well in all your future endeavors, and I hope that the world asks for you. You guys save your quarters. God bless. I'll see you next time.